Hi guys, my name is Kayla and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about which is better, Twilight or Vampire Diaries. I'm going to be talking about my opinions on both of these vampire franchises. I'm going to be talking about my feelings about both of them. And yeah, so before we get into the video, I have to say thank you for 700 subscribers. I really appreciate it, and that's why I decided to make a different type of video for this moment, because I'm very thankful for 700 subscribers and I just want to thank you by making a fun video. So before we get into the debate, I have to say that I love both of these things. Like, I love Twilight, I love the Vampire Diaries, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of opinions. So if you disagree, that's totally fine. Tell me in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys about it. I think it's so interesting, and like, at the end of the day, these things are movie and TV shows, you know. It's not real life. We can disagree, it's fine. But anyway, so let's get into the video. Okay, so if you're new to this channel, a long time ago I reacted to the first episode of Vampire Diaries and I made fun of it a lot, and I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. Okay, I was wrong. I'll state that. Write it down, everyone. I was wrong about Vampire Diaries. If you have been on this channel in a long time, you watched those videos, and I think I reacted to the first and second episode. But back then I didn't want to give it the time of day because I grew up watching Twilight. And of course, when I was a kid, it was all about which is better, which in my opinion doesn't matter. We can enjoy both or neither. If you don't care about either, then you're probably not watching this video. So, but yeah, that's just what I want to say. Like, I'm sorry that I made fun of it. Like, honestly, this is like YouTuber apology over here. But anyway, so we're going to talk about Twilight versus the Vampire Diaries. Now, like I said, I like both of them, honestly, in different ways, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But also we're going to be talking about the different type of vampires they have in these two different types of vampire stories. And I'll talk about like the differences between them and so forth. So I'm excited, let's get into it. Okay, so first up, we're talking about Twilight. Okay, so if you're new to this channel, or if you just haven't noticed, the intro to my videos is actually Bella's lullaby. Yeah. If you haven't noticed that yet, now you'll never not hear it. And if you don't know what Bella's lullaby is, it's just this song that's in the movie Twilight that is supposed to be written by Edward for Bella. Now, like I said, I grew up watching Twilight. And it's like one of those guilty pleasure franchises. Like, I fully acknowledge it's bad, okay? I know Twilight is trash. Like, I'm not one of those people that are here to defend it. It's trash. I know that. But I still love watching it for the chaos, for the memes, I laugh at it mostly. That's why I watch it, to make fun of it. And because I enjoy watching it. You know, I love vampires. I've done my fair share of vampire content on this channel, which is weird, I don't know why, but vampires are really popular. So of course there is a lot of different versions of vampires. And Stephanie Meyer, I don't know why she decided to write vampires, because, spoiler alert, she didn't. But Twilight vampires, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions, are not vampires. They're actually like fairies or elves or angels, I don't know. But my personal opinion is like they're fairies, which is like they're alluring to people. They have this alluring thing, but not a vampire alluring, because they don't have any of the like traditional vampire powers. Yes, they drink blood, but there are some versions of other mythical creatures that also drink blood, not just vampires. So I don't think that is really a part of the like debate. And a lot of people agree with like they're fairies, because it's like kind of very close to some versions of like Celtic fairies and like those types of fairies. And I know when you think fairies, you think wings, but some versions are more like kind of like a succubus vampire, even though they're not vampires. So yeah, long story short, Twilight vampires, in my opinion, aren't vampires. And to me, it doesn't really matter if they are, because in the context of the story, they believe they're vampires, and everyone else who knows about them believe they're vampires. So that is fine for the world, but in my opinion, they're not vampires. But yeah, so let's talk about the main protagonist of Twilight, Bella Swan, the Mary Sue of Twilight. And honestly, I like Bella. I know a lot of people are like, she's boring, she's not like other girls, and I don't like that she's like that, but also there are some parts of her that I do like. I used to feel like I was a lot like her when I was a child. I read a lot. A girl can read, what? I felt a lot like Bella. I was awkward, shy, and all of those things. Still kind of am, but But yeah, so I love Kristen Stewart as Bella. I think she did a good job with what there is to do with the part that she got. I think Edward is played well by Robert Pattinson. I do think that both Bella and Edward and Jacob are horrible, and they don't deserve anyone. Like the whole debate between like when I was a kid, Jacob versus Edward. Oh, who's better for Bella? Now I'm like, Bella? Both of them suck, and you kind of suck too. So maybe you and Alice should get together. That would be cool. But also, like, I don't know, all of them suck, honestly. They're not great people. And yes, they are vampires, so of course they are gonna be kind of not good people, which is fine. I don't think that the characters of a show or a movie need to be like good. I think it's fine for them to have any type of moral problems and things like that. I think it's interesting to see and all of that. But I do think that like Bella shouldn't pick either Edward or Jacob because they both suck in their own way. But anyway, let's not talk about that. That's not really what I'm talking about in this video. I want to talk more about the type of vampires. Okay, so in Twilight, vampires are like stone. They're like solid statues, which is like, Stephanie, what were you on? Okay, I don't know what the hell she was doing when she was writing Twilight. And it all started with a dream, apparently, which is like, okay, self-insert yourself like into this story, because let's face it, Stephanie is Bella. She's like very Mormon coded, and like she doesn't even drink coffee or Coca-Cola. If she drinks a can of Coke, she's a drug addict. Just hilarious. But anyway, but yeah, the vampires are statues, basically. They're frozen at the time they are made into vampires. They drink blood, either human or animal, like a lot of different vampire stories, including the Vampire Diaries. They apparently can get humans pregnant, which, whatever. Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about little Rasputin. Renesmee. She is a curse on this planet, and I never want to see that little face again. But I do rewatch Twilight sometimes, but when we get to Renesmee, I'm just like checked out. But anyway, so basically these vampires are like solid stone and they sparkle. And I do think that there is a bit of a like thing the movie did wrong about their sparkling, because in the book, when the first time Bella sees Edward, and yes, I did read the books. The first time Bella sees Edward, she doesn't think, oh, he's sparkling. She thinks he's on fire, which is in this world where that thing comes from, where if vampires get into the sun, they catch on fire because they sparkle so much that it looks like they're on fire. So it's not really a glitter effect like the movies do it and like everyone makes fun of. It's supposed to be ridiculously bright and like so noticeable that people would be like, ah, vampire, So I do think they do that wrong in the movies, but regardless, they do not catch fire in the sun like most normal vampires would. They also don't have any of the vampire powers, like I said. Like, yes, Edward can read minds. Yes, Alice can see the future. A bunch of the other ones have vampire powers as well. Even, like, my jaw dropped when Rami Malek in vampire form was the freaking Avatar The Last Airbender. How is that a vampire power? This is what I'm saying. Like, I like Twilight, but I know it's trash, like I said. Because why would a vampire have that power? Like, all of the powers in the vampire world of Twilight is ridiculous. Like, they don't, like I said, they don't have any of the vampire powers that we know. Like, they're not, yes, they are like attractive, super attractive to people, and like Edward says, my scent invites you in. The way I look invites you in. Even the way I sound invites you in. Which is like, whatever, Edward. I would be so far away from you. You're annoying. But vampires are supposed to have this allure to humans, and also like not kind of a mind control thing, but not really read minds, I'd say. Some versions of vampires do read minds, so maybe it would have been better if all of the Twilight vampires just read minds or something. Like, I do think it is important that vampires have a single, like, versions of their powers in, like, a story. Because, as shown in Twilight, like, every single vampire has, or at least some vampires have different powers, and it's just like too much. Like, they're so overpowered that it's like stakes don't even kill them. The only way you can kill them is like rip them apart and burn them, which is a vampire thing. But yeah, stakes can't kill them, which is like, they're so overpowered. And I just don't get it, honestly. But yeah, so those are Twilight vampires. Now, how do I feel about the whole Twilight franchise? I think there are too many books and movies, because honestly, only like the first three are good. I would have liked if Bella turned into a vampire like the first book, honestly, because Vampire Bella is interesting. Human Bella gets annoying at times. And look, I'm not hating on her. I think she's reacting like anyone would probably, except for the fact that she's not running away. But other than that, I think she's fine. It's just she's not very interesting as a main character, which is, normal people aren't sometimes interesting, but for a movie, you kind of need an interesting protagonist. Or at least for interesting things to happen to her. And there are interesting things that happen to her, but none of them have consequences. Like, she gets bitten, Edward sucks the venom out, which is like, why can you do that? Also, Edward leaves her, he just comes back. Jacob turns into a werewolf, acts all annoying the rest of the thing, and she like still cares about him. And don't get me started on the love triangle. Like, really, Twilight, the love triangle is non-existent. Like, I hate it when they do this, when there is a love triangle. Don't have a right choice, because that makes it so dumb. Like, back in the day, I was like, ooh, Edward or Jacob. But now that I'm older, I realize that the whole thing, Jacob was never an option. She was always going to pick Edward from the first day she saw him, because that's the whole point of this series. They have this toxic, unrealistic relationship that is fated to be. Like, they literally do not have a choice, which is the point of the books. Like, it's this weird relationship where they literally cannot choose not to be together. And I think that's interesting. But then don't pretend like she's going to choose someone else. Or at least make that person an interesting choice, because Jacob is the worst. Like, especially after turning into a werewolf. Like, in the beginning, I was like, oh, Jacob's cute. But then he starts getting aggressive and like demanding and forces himself on her and a bunch of other things. And it's just like, okay, so he's not an option, honestly. And Edward's also the worst, but at least have another option that you think like is better. You know what I mean? Like I would have found it interesting if there was another option that is like, oh, I really wish she would end up with that guy. And then it's like, but she can't. And I think that would have been cool. Stephanie, take notes. But anyway, yeah, so basically, how I feel about Twilight is I grew up watching it. It's nostalgic to me, even though it's not that old. But yeah, it's a part of my growing up. I will always think about Twilight when I think about vampires, even though, like I said, they're not vampires, but it's fine. And I love Twilight, but I do know that it's bad. So I would never be like, oh, Twilight's so good, you should watch it. Like, no, be realistic. You can watch it and love it. Just know what it is. And I think that's totally fine. Like, I love rewatching it and like being laughing at cringy moments and even loving some moments. And yeah, there are a lot of things that I like about the Twilight like universe. And yeah, so let's move on to the next one, Vampire Diaries. Okay, so I only recently watched Vampire Diaries for the first time. Like I said, I didn't want to give it the time of day because I grew up watching Twilight, and back then it was like you can either like Twilight or Vampire Diaries, which is ridiculous. Like you can like both, okay? Or you can like one if you like one. But now I'm like, I wanted to give it a chance. I thought it looked interesting. I saw a bunch of like clips on TikTok, so I was like, wow, this looks good. So that's how I ended up watching it. And let me tell you, I love this show. I love it. I haven't watched the originals, but I plan to because Klaus is iconic. Yes, he's awful, but he's iconic and I love characters like that. Like I said, a character doesn't have to be a good person for me to like them. I can understand that they're terrible and still find them interesting. It's just like Bane in Lost, if you've seen Lost. He's a terrible, terrible person, but he's so interesting to watch, and I kind of end up rooting for him sometimes, even though he's a murderer and psychotic, but he's fun to watch. So there are a lot of characters like that in this show, which I really enjoy. And I also enjoy that the show doesn't just do vampires. Like, Twilight has vampires and werewolves. There's no other mythical creatures, at least that they don't speak about them if there are others. And it's kind of like, I always find that weird in like media when they're like, oh, this one's real, but the other are stupid. Because sometimes they do that in like movies. They're like, oh, I'm a vampire, but oh yeah, mermaids, ridiculous. And it's like, there aren't mermaids in Vampire Diaries, but that was a dumb example. But like I'm saying, like there's witches, there's werewolves, there's hybrids, there's vampires, there's sirens. They're not, oh, well, that's kind of mermaids, but they're not really mermaids in this, but they are sirens, which is interesting. And not all versions of sirens are mermaids. Some of them are half chicken, and some of them are just women, which is like, yeah, we get it, man. Okay, chill. But anyway, so history, am I right? But yeah, my point is, I love that there is a bunch of different occults in Vampire Diaries because to me that makes more sense. Like, yes, it's a fictional universe, obviously, but if you're gonna make one of them real, make a lot of them real. You don't have to make all of them real, but just be like, okay, yeah, vampires, witches, werewolves, yeah, okay, they're real. Because it does seem ridiculous sometimes, like in Twilight when they're like, the vampires, first of all, the werewolves apparently aren't werewolves, they're like shapeshifters, and the actual werewolves are also out there, which is like, is that necessary? Just make them werewolves, we don't care. Nobody cares. But anyway, let's not talk more about Stephanie, she's insane. But I do love all of the different occults in Vampire Diaries. I think it's so interesting, and like I watched the hell out of that show. I even started watching it like again, and I had to stop myself because I was obsessed. And that's why I'm making this video, so I can talk about it. But also, so I want to compare these two vampire pieces of media that people have compared in the past. And even in Vampire Diaries, they talk about Twilight. I think one time Damon sits and reads Twilight and he's like, this Edward guy's stupid or something. And I loved that reference, which is like, because everyone was comparing these two things at the time. So why not reference it? And I think that's so interesting. Of course, I do know that Vampire Diaries, I think, was also a book series, but I have not read those because, like I said, I just recently watched the show, and honestly, I don't feel like reading the books. Because sometimes you don't feel like reading the books, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I read Twilight, but that was because I was trying to figure out if there was something missing, you know, and there was a lot missing. I do think some of the things they add in the books that aren't in the movies do make it make a little more sense, but it's still batshit crazy. So it doesn't help a lot, but I thought it would make it make sense. But yeah, Vampire Diaries makes sense to me, so let's talk about the main character, which is Elena. She is definitely like a lot like Bella, but actually good at stuff and interesting. Like, I love Elena. She's such a good main character. I know some people don't like her, which I don't really get. I think she's great. I think she takes control of her own life. She makes mistakes, but that's good. You know what I mean? A main character that's just perfect, that's Bella, and that's boring. And there are a lot of interesting things about the characters in this show. There are villains that become good, there are good people who become villains. Everything is morally grey, which I think a vampire story needs to be. There shouldn't be good guys and bad guys in a vampire story because vampires are bad. Full stop. You know what I mean? Like, not to compare to Twilight again, but that's literally the whole video. In Twilight, Edward's family, the Cullens, are the good vampires, and all the other ones are like seen as the bad vampires. And in the Vampire Diaries, like, even though some of them are better than others, like Stefan doesn't drink human blood, but also he's freaking insane when he accidentally drinks human blood. So they're all bad, and that's kind of the point. They're vampires, and like, I'm literally Damon. That's why he's like my favorite character in the show, because everything he says is literally what I'm thinking when I watch the show. Like, every snarky remark, everything he says, that is literally what I'm thinking. I'm like, kill that guy. Because they're vampires. Like, they're not good people. They're not. I do love that there is a moral struggle, though. I'm not saying they need to be villains. I'm saying they're vampires and the whole thing is morally grey. Like, there's no good vampires. You know what I mean? And that might be, I don't know, a dumb opinion or something, but I like it when, like, a creature like a vampire, the danger is what is alluring. Like, vampires has been something that a lot of people have been obsessed for a long time, and I do want to make a video about like different types of occults in media, like vampires, werewolves, and why those two especially are like the most popular. Because I've noticed, like, with men, werewolves, like, this is a generalization, of course, not always the case, but in general, with straight men, werewolves are the most popular. Look at how many like TikToks and freaking weird alpha male talk. They love werewolves, okay? And women love vampires because they're dangerous, they're alluring, they're everything we want, but no, we shouldn't want because they're dangerous, and they're bad because they're vampires. And it's literally just a metaphor for women's relationship with men. And of course, this is all just generalization. Of course, you can love werewolves or vampires either way, doesn't matter what your gender is, but I do think that is a big thing, and that is why obviously I've always loved vampires a lot more than werewolves, because I've always thought werewolves were kind of stupid. Like, who wants to turn into a dog? And like, bite people accidentally. Lame. At least when you're a vampire, you get to own it. And like, yes, you're bad, but also werewolves hurt people too. So at least when you're a vampire, you can make the choices, which I think is interesting because it's a moral dilemma, which is so interesting in a show, which is why I love the show so much. And I think it's definitely becoming one of my favorite shows of all time, which is crazy because back in the day, I would have never watched it. And I don't know why. I guess I was one of those people who were like, stuck in my ways with if I like one thing, I can't like the opposite thing, which is ridiculous. Like, calm down. You don't have to be not like other girls. But we'll not talk about that right now. But yeah, so of course we have a love triangle in this show as well. We have Elena, of course, the main character, and her love triangle is between Stefan and Damon. The whole time I was shipping Damon, even in the beginning when he's like bad. But I'm glad they end up together. Spoiler alert. Please do not watch this video if you haven't watched either of these things, honestly. But the whole time I was rooting for them because, look, Stefan is great. He's a good guy. But also, is he? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. But I do think he, like, the show pretends he's better than he is. Like, there's this one conversation I think he has one time where they're talking about Klaus, and like someone says like Klaus is horrible or something, and then I think it's Stefan who says like, but is he any worse than us? Like, what makes us better than him? We've killed a bunch of people too. We're probably gonna still kill a bunch of people. Like, what makes us different? And it's just like, that's it. You're not different. And yes, Klaus is horrible. I'm not saying Klaus is a good person, obviously. I'm not delusional. But I'm saying that they're all kind of bad. So having Stefan have this like Damon calls him the hero thing going on, like I do think he is good for a vampire, but also he's also very bad when he drinks blood. And sometimes even bad when he doesn't drink blood, like just when he doesn't get what he wants. And I'm not saying I don't like him as a character, I do. And I did love his relationship with Elena, but I do think that Damon's more interesting, okay? They're both bad guys, they're both vampires. So why not pick the fun one? That's my opinion on it. I might be crazy, but you know, I'm always drawn to the bad choice, honestly. But anyway, let's not talk about my personal problems. So yeah, basically I love Vampire Diaries, and let's answer the question, which one's better? Which one's better? And in my opinion, this is crazy because I grew up watching Twilight and thinking it was better, but the Vampire Diaries is better. It's better. It has better storylines, better character arcs, better conclusions of storylines. Yes, I didn't really like the last season that much, to be honest with you, but the rest of the show, iconic. And even though, like I said, I'll always love Twilight, but now I love Vampire Diaries too, and I do think it is better. Better in every way. Especially if you consider which is the better piece of vampire media, which is what it's about, you know? The vampires. So, yeah, I think Vampire Diaries is better in that regard. Like, of course, you can talk about what you like better, which is fine. I like Vampire Diaries better, I think. But if you like Twilight better, that's totally fine. But I do think Vampire Diaries definitely, like, objectively have better vampires because they are vampires. They drink blood, they have this allure, they don't have ridiculous powers, I don't know, I just like them. And I like that they are scary. Because one problem I've always had with Twilight vampires is they're not scary. They're not. Like, yes, they're dangerous and ridiculously overpowered, but they're not scary. The whole point of vampires is they're scary and dangerous and killers, and they're alluring and mysterious and beautiful sometimes, But yeah, that is the whole like dichotomy of it. That is the point of a vampire as a creature. Like it's supposed to be like, ooh, I want to get closer, but I know I shouldn't. But the Twilight vampires are kind of like, meh, you know? So yeah, personally, I think Vampire Diaries is better. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Honestly, I decided to make this video because I wanted to do something special and interesting for 700 subscribers. Once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's keep on growing and I'll keep making videos for you guys. I am planning on doing more kinds of videos like these because I do think it's fun sometimes to take a break from a reaction thing and just do a video about movies or shows, because at the end of the day, that's what this channel is about. It's about movies and shows and cinema. So, cinema, yeah. Okay. But anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and check out my Patreon if you want to. Link is in the description. I'd appreciate the support. I'll see you in the next video.